Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into Niccolò Machiavelli's The Art of War.
That's right, a really foundational text.
And you, our listener, want those key takeaways, maybe some surprising insights quickly. So that's our mission.
Uh-huh. We're zeroing in on his ideas about, well, how military and civilian life should connect, and his big push for a citizen army.
Which is interesting because right off the bat, Machiavelli argues they should be deeply linked. That feels kind of counterintuitive sometimes, doesn't it?
It really does. We often think of them as separate worlds, but for him, a well-run society needed its own defense, drawn from his own people.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why was he so against the idea of, professional soldiers, the specialists?
Well, his main concern really was suspicion. He saw professional soldiers as needing war for their paycheck.
So their profession itself could breed traits like greed or violence, because that's how they make a living.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their interests might not align with the state's desire for peace. He points to historical figures, mercenaries like Sforza, who became powerful, even dangerous, in their own right.
You're right, they could turn on their employers.
Potentially, yes, or just prolong conflicts unnecessarily.
And he contrasts this with ancient Rome.
Yes, specifically the early Roman Republic, before, things got complicated later on.
Like,
Back then, he argued, they didn't have a permanent professional army in the same way. Citizens served. It was a duty.
then they just went back to their lives, farms, businesses.
Precisely. The classic example is Cincinnatus, right?
Yeah.
Called from his plow to lead, won the battle, and then just went back to farming. No standing around and waiting for the next war.
So Machiavelli's point is that your own citizens, armed and trained, are always going to be more reliable.
And less dangerous
Yeah.
than relying on outsiders, on mercenaries. He actually criticized places like Venice, even France at the time, for not fully committing to this citizen-soldier model.
Okay, so if you're going to build this citizen army, how did he envision doing it? This Diletto system, selection and training.
Yeah, the Diletto, he had some specific ideas. He preferred infantry recruits from the countryside.
Why there?
He thought they were just hardier, tougher, used to physical labor,
Mhm.
more resilient.
Okay, but cavalry.
Cavalry could come from the cities, maybe a bit more refined, but infantry was the core, and he wanted them tough.
And what about age?
Pretty broad range initially, like 17 to 40 if you're starting a new army, just 17 if you're topping up the ranks.
And the training sounds intense.
Oh, absolutely. Very physical, running, jumping, wrestling, even carrying heavy weights to build strength and endurance.
He also mentioned something about practice weapons.
Right. Train with weapons heavier than the real ones, so when you get the actual sword or pike, it feels light, manageable.
Smart, huh?
Yeah, that is clever. And he stressed thrusting with a sword over slashing. He did. More effective against armor, more direct. Discipline was also huge. Obeying orders instantly, keeping ranks tight, no room for individuality in formation.
How did he see them organized?
Into battalions. Think big units, maybe around 6,000 men. He compares them to Roman legions or Swiss battalions.
Okay.
And these battalions were broken down into companies, specific roles. You had your shield guys, your pikemen, even light infantry, the veliti. Very detailed structure.
He also talked about specific drills, right? Like maintaining formations.
Yeah, things like the chiacchiole, these sort of spiraling maneuvers to keep ranks, forming squares, solid ones, horned ones for different situations, quick reorganization using signals, numbers, distinct markings.
It sounds incredibly organized, almost like a dance but deadly.
It had to be. That was the key to infantry effectiveness. He even compared Roman infantry with their armor to the German pike formations.
What was his take there?
He felt Roman armor offered better close combat protection against both cavalry and other infantry. German pikes were great at a distance, but vulnerable if the enemy got in close, especially if well armored.
So his ideal was a mix.
Kind of, yeah. Roman-style armor and discipline, maybe combined with the reach of pikes and early firearms.
What about cavalry? Seems like infantry was the star for him.
Definitely. He saw cavalry as secondary, useful for scouting, raiding, harassing the enemy, cutting off supplies.
But not for winning the main battle.
Less decisive there, he thought. He actually criticized Italy's recent history and his time for relying too much on cavalry forces.
And how did his ideal infantry defend against horsemen?
Well, part of it is inherent. Horses are actually pretty reluctant to charge headlong into a solid block of pointy things and determined men.
Makes sense. Instinct.
Right. And terrain helps. Broken ground, obstacles. That really favors the infantry. Slows the horses down, breaks up the charge.
So wrapping this up, the core message from Machiavelli's Art of War seems to be A strong state needs its own people defending it.
Absolutely. Armed, trained, disciplined citizens who are part of society, not separate from it, who go back to their lives when the fighting's done. It's a stark warning against relying on professionals or mercenaries whose loyalty is ultimately to themselves.
Which really makes you think, doesn't it? In our age of, drones, cyber warfare, highly specialized military roles, is there still a place for Machiavelli's idea, this deep connection between citizen and soldier?
It's a fascinating question. What are the modern versions of the strengths he saw in citizen armies or the weaknesses he saw in professional ones? Does that connection still matter?
Something to definitely mull over. How do these centuries-old arguments resonate, or not, with today's debates on service, defense, and the military's place in society? Thanks for diving deep with us today.